Um, Good evening. My name is Leila Logizeko. I'm the district leader representing Chelsea, and I am honored to welcome you tonight to a candidates forum that is hosted by CRDC, the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club, in collaboration with our partners, Hell's Kitchen Democrats. Tonight, we will hear from candidates for the New York City Comptroller position, as well as the Manhattan Borough President position. Those are two offices that play a critical role in shaping the city's financial future and borough-wide governance. First, I want to give a big thank you to all our club members who submitted questions. Your engagement makes these forums meaningful and ensures we focus on the issues that matter to our community. I also want to recognize our state committee woman, friend Hazel Korn, Candace Hewitt, who is the recently elected president of CRDC, as well as Roberta Gale, who is our past president and fierce leader in this community. We want to thank them for their leadership and commitment to strengthening our club. On the West Side, we believe in giving our communities a voice and a seat at the table. So candidates forums like these are essential, and we have a chance to hear directly from those seeking to represent us and to make informed decisions about our leadership. So a few words about how the evening is going to proceed. Forum rules and format. We will spend 19 minutes with each candidate. So here's how it will be broken down. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to introduce themselves. And then following that, we'll use the remaining 15 minutes for Q&A. Members of the public in the audience, you will have an opportunity to ask your question. Your questions have not been pre-screened or vetted. It's not coming from some sort of question committee. We really believe in your participation. So if you're in the room, please make sure that you sign the question sheet that is up front. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We will take questions from members of the audience, 2 in the room, 2 on Zoom. Priority will be given to club members. If we run out of questions with the club members, then we will go to non-club members. If you would like, once again, if you would like to ask a question, make sure that you sign the question sheet up front. The rules on this Q&A section, we will give you 30 seconds to ask your question, and the candidates will have 1 minute to answer. We will strictly enforce this time limit. Daniel Soso, who is sitting at this table, who is CRDC's treasurer, will ensure that we stick to this time. He is actually the clock master, the time master for tonight, the timekeeper, and we really want to make sure that we hear as many people as possible. So we will really enforce this rule. Lastly, it goes without saying that we will all maintain decorum at all times and treat each other and the candidates with respect. This is a space for meaningful discussion, and we're here to listen, engage, and hold our future leaders accountable. So thank you all for being here tonight. And I would like to introduce my co-moderator for this event, Paul Devlin, district leader for the Hell's Kitchen part of our assembly district. We could not have done this without Hell's Kitchen's help. And I'm going to turn it to Paul. Paul.
Merci, Leila. Thank you. She took away half my thunder. I'm Paul Devlin. I'm the district leader from Hell's Kitchen. I'd like to thank everybody for doing all the great work to pull this together. Leila has been stalwart. Roberta, everybody else contributed so much to making this happen, and I'm really grateful. I'd like to recognize Sean Coughlin, who is newly elected president of Hell's Kitchen Democrats. So Sean is in the room looking around. I'd also like to make note of thanking the host today, the New York City Seminar Club, and then also our great audiovisual team, because these things don't run smoothly without a whole team of people behind the cameras. So thank you to all of you. With that, I think we're ready to just turn it over. You don't want to hear from me. Let's hear from the candidates. So I'm turning it back to Leila.
Thank you so much, Paul. So we will start with candidates who are seeking the position of New York City Comptroller. And the first candidate coming to the podium is our current borough president, Mr. Mark Levine.
Good evening, CRDC and HK Down. Great to see all of you. Great to see so many friends. These are two clubs which, punch above your weight. You also throw a great party. It was fun hanging out with you last week. I mean, you had Marty Gould Cummings perform. How cool is that? Definitely a thrill to be friends and partners and allies with so many of you in this room. But I want to say something serious for a moment. We are 9 days in to a presidency which is even more disastrous than we warned it would be. And we saw this yesterday when the human service sector of New York City was thrown into disarray when Trump threatened to revoke federal funding, which had already been contracted. Now, today he backed down. He relented, proving that we can still win fights against Donald Trump. But we know that more chaos and cruelty is coming. And to me, this means that local government and local politics is going to matter more than ever. We've got to stand up and fight for this city to protect the people here who will be under attack from Trump, whether it is LGBTQ New Yorkers or our immigrant neighbors. We have to fight to protect the budget and fiscal health and economy of the city under attack from Trump. And we have to show that Democrats can lead, that we can deliver results, that we can address the affordability crisis in the city, that we can make New York safer, and that we can restore confidence in government. And to take on these challenges, I am thrilled to be here today as a candidate to be the next New York City Comptroller. This is an office which is critical at any time, but more now than ever because of the threats coming from Trump. And it's a role that I've been preparing for my entire career, since I graduated from college with a physics degree and became a bilingual math and science teacher in junior high school 149 in District 7 in the South Bronx. Many of my students' families had no connection to the formal financial system, relying on a predatory network of loan sharks and check cashing stores. So I decided to do something about it. I started a community development financial institution in Uptown Manhattan, serving Washington Heights and West Harlem. This is a community credit union called Neighborhood Trust, still going strong. It's made $100 million in small loans, helping families do everything from buy their first home computer to start a business to get a mortgage. When I got to the city council in 2014, I took the stories of the credit union members and my students back in junior high school 149 and my neighbors uptown. And one of the first bills I put in was to address an out of control eviction crisis at that time. I put in a bill to make New York City the first place in America to establish right to counsel for tenants facing eviction in housing court. What fought? You can applaud for that if you support right to counsel. Yes, you can. What followed was an epic 3-year battle against the full force of the landlord lobby. I didn't back down. I was relentless. I organized and we won. We have changed housing court in New York City forever. We have lowered the eviction rate in New York City and started a national movement. I also am proud to have taken on owners of buildings in Morningside Heights when I created the community's first ever historic district, preserving 100 buildings in perpetuity. And yes, indeed, preservationists can applaud for that. And then as chair of the health committee in the city council during COVID, I stood up for science and good policy when that was not politically popular. And I incurred the wrath of the national right. What does that mean? Okay.
Oscar music.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
Okay, got it. All right. Boy, 4 minutes goes very fast. Okay. Was that really my time?
Yes.
Can I cut into questions for 1 more minute? Okay.
We'll wrap up your sentence. Right, go ahead.
Okay. In my Q&A, I'm going to talk about more of my agenda and my plans for Comptroller. How's that? Deal? All right. Thank you. Let's do it.
I'm sure you're going to have some good questions coming your way. Okay, so members who are joining online, please use the raise hand function if you want to ask a question to any of the candidates. So if you want to ask a question to Mark Levine running for New York City Comptroller, you can use the raise hand function. Great. Let's start with members of the audience in the room. We'll take two at a time. And the first question goes to, let's start with our former president, Roberta Gelb. Roberta, please come to the microphone to the right of the room.
So there are over 250,000 retirees in New York City who were promised that they would get medical coverage and insurance coverage. And so far, they have been the city has tried to push them into Medicare Advantage. They have had 11 lawsuits costing them huge amounts of money, tens of thousands, if not $100,000 to support them, what they were promised. What will you do as controller, since you will have the mighty pen and you will have the checkbook? Will you promise to support them?
And you are right.
Please use the microphone for
Roberta.
folks on Zoom.
And you are right. While I'm not in the city council now, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected comptroller, a key role of the office is the comptroller, as you know, but just so the audience knows, must certify every contract. I will not certify a contract that denies retirees healthcare they were promised.
No follow-ups. No follow-ups. You have a full minute to answer the question, Mark. So do you want to expand on that? Okay. Great. The next question will go to Katie Hamel.
I had a different question, but following up, as borough president, why have you not signed on to 1096, or will you?
I'm not in the city council now, and I'm deferring to my friends in the body, but I think I said very clearly that when I have determinative power as comptroller, where I'll have the ability to approve or deny contracts, I will not certify any contract that undermines the healthcare that retirees were promised. That's my commitment to you.
All right, the next question will be online, calling Christine Gorman and Lizette Colon. You are going to be promoted and permitted to speak. Christine, you're permitted to speak. You can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. One of the functions of the comptroller is to root out corruption. How corrupt is the city of New York compared to other cities in the country? And what would you do differently from other comptrollers in rooting out corruption?
Well, this is not just a matter of opinion. There's been a number of cases brought by the Department of Investigation and now by U.S. prosecutors alleging corruption at the highest levels of New York City government. This undermines confidence in government. It cheats taxpayers and it leads to substandard services. Certainly the job of a comptroller is to use the powers of audit and subpoena to root out that kind of corruption. I can't say I can compare New York City to others, but I can tell you that we have more work to do here. I will be fearless and independent and standing up to any mayor and using the powers of the office to root out corruption, inefficiency, and waste so that we deliver services honestly and effectively for the people of the city.
Thank you. The next question goes to Lizette Colon.
Yes, good evening, everybody. This is a follow-up question to the previous two first speakers. Mr. Levine, will you use your influence and position in the city to go public to the city council and say, this is my position and this is why I think that you should be supporting Intro 1096 and not wait until you are or not elected as controller? Thank you.
Okay, such cheerful music. Well,
Thank you, Lizette.
I'd be up to meeting with you, Lizette, and some of your colleagues to talk about what I can do in the city council. I have largely deferred to my colleagues there on this, but I hope to have a serious role in this going forward. And in that case, I won't shy away. I think I've answered now a couple of questions on that. I'll use the power of contract certification to ensure that healthcare promised to retirees is not denied.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question goes to Kat Lafferty. As a 25-year resident of Hell's Kitchen and a longtime community gardener, parks are a major theme for me. And I just wonder if you have any ideas in terms of how to enable the budget of parks. I feel like often, especially in the participatory budgeting process, we have many parks-related ideas that need funding, but I feel like often parks themselves are tied, or their hands are tied because they don't have the money. So I would love to hear some creative solutions on how parks can have more agency.
I chaired the New York City Parks Committee when I was in the city council, and I fought for equity in the park system because I think every park should be as beautiful as Central Park, and there's no getting around it. We are underfunding parks. Now, it's fine in Central Park. They have a lot of private money. God bless. It's doing great. But it's not fair to smaller parks or parks in lower income neighborhoods who rely exclusively on the Parks Department budget. Now, there was a time in the 70s when we devoted 1.5% of our city's budget to the parks. Today, it's less than 0.5%. And that is why we have inadequate maintenance and service in our parks. So I believe we should have a 1% parks budget that I've signed a pledge, % for parks. I'll fight for that as comptroller to make sure that we restore parks budgets to the level that they had been historically. So you see the improvements you described in parks across the city. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes to Lydia Andre.
Hi. When you were borough president, you appointed several members of Open New York to community boards. I see now you've written that you won't accept any lobbying money from them. I'm asking if, as controller, you will put aside any political biases you brought to the borough presidency and look at every contract and every issue facing the city anew, as if those relationships don't travel with you, because I think it's important that they don't.
Well, look, I'm very proud of the almost 1,000 community board appointments that I've made over the past 3 years. They're an incredible diversity of people from all backgrounds. And I've also really sought to have a diversity of viewpoints on contentious policy, whether it is transportation or housing. And that's because these are issues where there's not a consensus and we want a robust debate. And so, yeah, I've appointed ardent preservationists. I've appointed people who believe the solution to the housing crisis is more supply. I've appointed people who believe the solution is tighter rent regulation. And what has ensued has been the kind of debate that we need to get to the right answer. So, but getting to your question, I will be dispassionate and objective in every contract that I review. And I'll continue to be a fighter for more housing in the city that we desperately need. We need more affordable housing in particular to address what is the worst housing affordability crisis in our city's history.
Thank you. The next question goes to Paul Devlin.
Mark, and the role of comptroller is to manage the pension funds for the city and I'm sorry, I'm bad on the microphone. Manage the pension funds for the city and how they're invested and make sure there's good returns so we don't dip into the general fund to pay retirees. Is there also a concern amongst people that we in New York City invest our money in socially responsible causes? So can you talk a little bit about, would you invest in funds that don't manufacture guns or anything along those lines, but while still maintaining a high enough return to not have to dip into the general fund?
Look, we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the assets of our retirees. I hope to one day be one of them. But at the same time, pension investments should reflect our interests and our values. That absolutely means divesting from fossil fuel production companies and private prisons and weapons manufacturers. And I want to give credit to some of my recent predecessors and the current comptroller who have made a lot of progress on that. There is still more work to do, though. And I will continue that divestment push while investing positively in green technology and in financing affordable housing in New York City. Again, in a way that is consistent with our fiduciary responsibility. But we can finance affordable housing projects in the city that might not otherwise get built. This would be a win-win for the pension funds, and it's one of my top campaign promises.
Thank you. The next question goes on Zoom to Heather Laval. You are permitted to speak.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I'm wondering, you know, we have a very significant number of migrants in our neighborhood, specifically HK, specifically migrant children. And I'm wondering how, given the current climate, especially with Eric Adams and Donald Trump, how you would use city funds to support our neighbors, specifically in our neighborhood. Thank you.
I want to say something very clearly. This wave of arrivals is going to be great for New York City, just as every other wave of arrivals throughout our history has been. And we need their vitality, we need their dynamism. They are already contributing to our economy in many ways. In the short term, a lot of these families have tremendous needs. And that includes the young people who need an education and are struggling to get over trauma. And I'm very proud of the fact that young people in Hell's Kitchen in particular, notably here, have been welcomed into local public schools. And I talk to parents both of migrant children and of longtime families, and it has been so good for our school system. It's been a wonderful dialogue between recent arrivals and longtime families, but they need investments. We need to invest more for these kids. We need more bilingual staff in all categories, certainly social workers and therapists, because of the trauma these kids have experienced, and also traditional teachers who can help with the language transition.
Thank you.
Hi,
And now Fran Hazelcorn. Fran, go ahead.
quick question. Mark, do you know the difference between Medicare, plain ordinary Medicare, and Medicare Advantage?
Yes, I do, Fran. But do you want to ask a more detailed question?
Well, the detail is that you didn't, the people were promised that they could choose what they wanted to become part of, okay? Medicare, if they wanted. And Medicare Advantage has been put out as a substitute choice, and it's not a choice. And this goes back to the retirees, and this is one of the arguments that they have, that they are being pushed, trying to be pushed into this Medicare Advantage, which is a big.
So what is the question, Fran?
The question is, do you know the difference between Medicare?
Yes, I do. And if I didn't know, then the hundreds of emails I've received over the last few months, or probably thousands, would have educated me on that. So yes, I completely hear it. I know that you were promised Medicare Advantage was not what you were promised. I understand that. And I don't think you should have that promise withdrawn from you. And I will use my powers as comptroller to support you in that.
Thank you. The next question goes to Carla Fine. Carla.
See, this is very passionate about retirees. So I think there's a $15 billion Aetna contract, which would get all the for the Medicare Advantage. And would you accept that? I think the previous comptroller did not. So if it comes to you, because when you say that you support having good health care, you can hear this. Seems to be the #1 issue. And so far, I haven't gotten a response from you. I haven't heard. Are you against this Aetna $15 billion with a B contract so retirees will be forced against their will into privatized healthcare? Are you against it?
Thank you, Carla.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into that comment, into the contract, but certainly what I know about it now, I would not approve it. But I would be happy to meet with you and some of the other retirees, and maybe we can get into more detail about that.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Renee Kitt. Renee. Renee, do you want to come up front? Come up front.
Okay, all right. Two of you have supported the demolition of Fulton and Elliott Chelsea houses, yet survey data has shown that 550 are in favor of new construction and rezoning versus the 949 who have signed the petition stating no demolition. So to everyone, how do you justify continuing to support the demolition against the will of the 949?
And tell me your name again, ma'am.
My name is Renee Kitt.
Renee. Oh, yes. Forgive me, Renee. Yes. I think I've met you on Zoom before.
Yeah, I'm now the resident association president of Elliott
Yes,
Chelsea.
yes, forgive me. I hadn't met you in person. So congratulations. Congrats on your election, Renee. Look, here are my principles here. I want to get high quality housing for every resident of Chelsea, Elliott, and Fulton. Modern, high quality housing. I would like to get more affordable housing on the campus. And I am open to creative solutions to do that. And I think we met once and we've talked about that, but I'd be happy to meet with you again. I just want to get the results of high quality housing and more affordable units. And I would want to hear your ideas on how best to do that.
Okay, so you wanna, all right, so we'll talk.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Thank you. One last question is going to Tunesia Kirkland.
So you stated that you don't take real estate lobby money. However, your top donors overwhelmingly identified as real estate professionals, including Open New York Executive Director Anna Marie Gray. How do you explain this, and will you return the money?
I have, when I was running for borough president, the re-election had a pretty strict policy about not wanting to take money from developers because I was running for a job where I would have decision-making authority over land use projects. And I'm running for a different job now. And there are very strict rules that, of course, I adhere to, but not taking money from companies that have business before the pension fund or seek to be asset managers at the pension fund. I'm running to be comptroller now. So I've very strictly adhered to that. I'll check the questionnaire, but I think the question was whether we took money from RevNE, which has a PAC, and I guess Open New York, which has a PAC. And to my knowledge, I have not taken those PAC checks, but I will confirm that for you and follow up for sure.
All right, thank you. This actually concludes our Q&A. Thank you so much. Mark, do you want to give a quick 30 seconds to a minute closing statements? Thank you.
I'm going to use the powers of the comptroller's office to fight for you, to make sure that our pensions are invested in ways consistent with the values of this community, to use the power of audit to oversee agencies from housing to police to sanitation to homeless services, to fight for quality of life improvements here in the neighborhood, whether it's getting down excessive scaffolding or opening more public bathrooms. We can do this. We can tackle New York City's affordability crisis. We can make New York City safer. We can restore confidence in government. This is why I am running to be your comptroller, and I couldn't be prouder to win your support in this race, if you so choose, to represent you in this new role. Thank you, HK Dems and CRDC. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mark, for being with us tonight. All right, moving on to the next candidate, calling up Justin Brannan. Thank you so much. Let me repeat the rules so that everybody's on the same page. So far, everybody is really behaving. So thank you so much for that. The rules are that we will spend 19 minutes with each candidate. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to introduce themselves, and the remaining 15 minutes will be Q&A. If you have a question, use the sign-in sheet if you're in the room, raise your hand if you're on Zoom, 30 seconds for your question and 1 minute for the answer. All right, Justin, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Chelsea Reform Dems and the Hell's Kitchen Dems for putting on this forum tonight. Everyone that came out tonight in person and everyone that's watching on Zoom at home. I'm Councilman Justin Brannan. I'm currently chair of the council's finance committee, where I oversee and negotiate the largest municipal budget in the country of $115 billion. Have a lot of fights with Eric Adams and win a lot of those fights because a lot of the cuts that he's made have been hurtful to New Yorkers. And it's our job to stand up to this mayor or any mayor that comes in there and tries to take services away from New Yorkers. I had a very unconventional road to politics. I spent 10 years in a hardcore punk band touring the world. I learned 3 chords in public school and junior high school in Bay Ridge. And 3 chords is really all you need to be in a punk rock band. And I traveled the world. And when I was done traveling, I came back to my neighborhood and I got involved locally. I joined my local community board, which is why I have a ton of respect for community board members. And I think that elected officials that try to steamroll community board decisions are wrong. But I fell in love with government because I love helping people. I love undoing someone's knot and sending them on their way. That's really what local government is all about. For the past 3 years now, I've been chair of the finance committee, and I wouldn't be running for controller if I wasn't chair of the finance committee. I fell in love with the budget process and the power of the budget. With a $115 billion budget, it shouldn't be so hard to get by in the richest city in the world. We shouldn't be struggling so hard. The tabloids, the New York Post will tell you that rich people are leaving the city. It's not true. Working families are leaving the city because they're getting squeezed out because of the cost of living. And I think the sharpest tool we have in our arsenal to bring down the cost of living, to make the city more affordable, is that $115 billion budget. If we're allocating our money to the programs and priorities that make life easier for working families and for working people, then we have a more affordable city. And I'm talking about things like early childhood education, investing in our parks, investing in CUNY, investing in getting serious about universal childcare. These are all things that the city of New York should be doing to bring down that cost of living. And I would be honored to have your endorsement. And I look forward to your questions. And it's good to meet everybody. Thank you.
All right, let's jump right in. Thank you so much.
How did I do on time?
You did really well. You actually saved us
Hope that scores me support.
a few minutes, which is really brilliant.
Okay.
So same rule. Please, if you're on Zoom, use the raise hand function to indicate that you wish to speak and that you have a question. We're going to start in the room, and let's actually start with Renee Kitt. Renee, come back up.
You could just shout from the back.
No, we need it for Zoom.
Oh, we need it for Zoom. Sorry.
Who hasn't been on Zoom in the past?
Yeah, you can. Fair point taken, sir. Point taken.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So there's a proposed demolition of Fulton houses and Elliott Chelsea houses in Chelsea. There was a survey. It said the 550 were surveyed and they voted, or should I say surveyed, for new construction and rezoning. We have a petition with 949 against the demolition. So do you support the demolition when you have 949 tenants stating no to it?
No, I do not support. I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Do not support the demolition. I feel, yeah. As councilman right now, I represent Coney Island. So I represent a lot of public housing in Coney Island. And I believe when it comes to public housing, we have to make sure that we're keeping public housing public, and we shouldn't be throwing in the towel. And this, for me, what's going on here is basically us surrendering that we've run out of options, right? But we've tried nothing. So you can't say we've run out of options if you actually haven't tried anything. And it's like I said before, when I first started speaking, as someone who really came up through the civic process and was a community board member and really, a sort of a civic activist, ignoring the voices of over 1,000 people who don't want something. This is not where our politics need to be right now. And as a leader, you need to know when to listen and when to lead. And sometimes leading means listening to as many people as possible. So I find it disgusting that we're hearing this in many areas, Miami. But I find it disgusting in many areas that politicians now are just completely steamrolling or ignoring the will of the community. And that's just not who I am and not who I'd be as controller.
Well, thank you for that response.
Thank you.
Could you give that to our elected officials?
Will do.
Thank you. All right, the next question goes to Judith DeHeel.
Hi, Judith.
Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm going to be like a broken record, but I'd like to know what you're going to do to support Medicare and prevent Medicare Advantage. It's just like the charter schools that were taking money away from public education by promoting charter schools. Medicare Advantage is taking money away from traditional Medicare that we need. And I'd like to know, what are your ideas about getting rid of it, Medicare Advantage?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I have about 17 New York City retirees in my family. So this is a very personal issue for me. The city has made a covenant with retirees and said, look, when you retire, this is what you can count on. This is the insurance you're going to have. This is the healthcare you're going to have. To pull the rug out from underneath folks that literally spent their lives running the city and keeping the city moving is despicable. What you were promised is what you deserve. If the city wants to change healthcare for someone that starts working for the city next Monday, that's fine. We can have that conversation. But changing it for you, for retirees that have been retired for decades, and this is what you were promised, is wrong, and I do not support it. And as controller, if I am lucky enough to be elected controller, I would not sign any contract that changes your healthcare, period, the end, because I don't want to get yelled at by my mom and my aunt and my government.
All right, thank you. The next question is going to be online and it's going to Miriam Fisher. Miriam, you're permitted to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you. We all had a scare with Trump threatening our health care, and then it was rescinded. And we hear about the retirees. I'm interested in the broader picture also about Medicare for all, single payer, the New York Health Act, where they were rallying at the same time in Albany that Hochul was giving her budget. Where do you stand on Medicare for all? Would you support that, or?
Thank you, Miriam.
Absolutely. I believe that healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege in this country. I support universal healthcare. I'd love to see us get to a day where we can provide that. I think whether you're rich or poor, if you're rich, you can have a nicer car, but our health insurance should be the same because no one is more important than anybody else. So I support universal healthcare. I would love to see it expanded on a city level where we could do some work through the public hospital system, where I think we could do a lot of work there. It's scary because what we're seeing is a privatization, whether it's public housing or healthcare, you're seeing privatization, and we've got to get away from that. As a person who believes in government, believes in the system, believes in the government as a tool to advance equity, we have to move away from privatization at every level. And it starts here in New York City. And one of the reasons why I'm running for controller is because I feel over the next 4 years with Donald Trump, with whatever fresh hell he's going to be sending our way, the way that we protect ourselves is how we allocate our money. And that's what this is all about.
Thank you. The next question is online and goes to Lizette Colon. Lizette, you're permitted to speak.
Yes, this is a follow-up, two follow-up comments and questions. I support what Renee was saying and asking you about the no demolition, and I'm happy to hear that. As a council member, I hope that you push the other city council members to stay away from that and support the tenants in those complex that we're talking about. But when you were saying that you are part of family that are retirees and they were going to yell at you, I really was shocked to hear that you still have not You still have not supported Intro 1096. There are only 8 sponsors, and as a city council member, if you're really sure that you're supporting retirees, you could do that now. You don't have to wait until you will become or not a controller.
Thank you, Lizette.
Thank you, Lizette. So sure. So I'm an open book with this whole issue. OMB came to us 3 years ago and said, we've got a way to save $600 million a year. And this was because at the time, the mayor was trying to convince everyone that the migrant crisis was going to bankrupt the city and we had to save money. So we said, okay, let's hear your idea. They pitched us this Medicare Advantage idea. I left the meeting, I made 3 phone calls and realized it was the worst idea in the world, right? Okay. Now, 3 years later, every year I fought as chair of the finance committee, I fought in that budget to make sure that that $600 million was in that budget so you could continue having the coverage you have now while the mayor tries to fight you to overturn it. So this year, as we're in March, we start our preliminary budget hearings. I plan to make this a huge issue in this budget process to say, look, you came to us 3 years ago and said, we can't afford the $600 million anymore. We have to change. We have to sell out our retirees to save this money. We were not with it. But now it's been 3 years that we've been paying $600 million a year and we're doing just fine and the city is not bankrupt. So they should get rid of the whole Medicare Advantage plan, stop fighting you in the court and get over it.
All right, thank you. The next question is in the room and goes to Kathy Nazari. Kathy.
Hi, Justin.
Hey, Kathy.
How are you?
Good.
As comptroller, would you have the ability to increase funding to ACC? And if so, what would you do? And also, rescue groups who do TNR?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So the folks my wife and I take care of a whole colony of feral cats behind our house. It costs us a fortune, but we do it because we love these freaking cats, right? The city right now is basically exploiting the compassion of animal lovers by relying on local kitchen table groups to pay for TNR. I think it's insane. The city should absolutely increase funding to ACC through the Department of Health to give money to these local nonprofits that do TNR because it should be subsidized by the city. I think it's just wrong. And the controller's office can make sure that we're seeing I know a lot of people that work for ACC. I think they do an amazing job with what they're up against, but they're not being funded at the levels they should be funded at. They're treating the staff like garbage. They need more staff. They need more resources. And as someone who's a vegetarian and a lifelong animal lover, this is very important to me. And I want to see more money in the budget for animal welfare.
Thank you. The next question goes to, I'm sorry, Carla Fine. Carla.
You're asking us to trust you. I want to know why you won't sign on to 1096.
Sure.
And you know that this is a issue and you're going to tell us all these different answers. I just want to know why you won't sign. You've given us every single one, and Marianne goes through every single answer that when you say you won't, you and other, and
that's fine.
It would help us. You hear it, don't you hear? You start.
I hear it from my own mother. I hear it from everybody. I get it.
Okay, but okay.
All right. Thank you, Carla.
Understood.
Thank you.
So let's remember, I was a co-sponsor of 1099, so I'm not afraid of signing on to the bill. I think we all want to get to the same place. I just think there might be another way to get there. If I can't get the city to, I invite you to follow our budget hearings that are starting next month. And when we say to the Office of Management and Budget, why are you trying to push retirees off of the healthcare that they've had for 30, 40, 50 years? When you first came to us, the only reason why you wanted to do this was to save money. And for the past 3 years, we've had that money in the budget year after year after year. I'm going to fight to make sure it's in the budget again this year. There is no reason to change There's no reason to kick seniors off and onto Medicare Advantage.
All right, thank you. The next question goes online to Christine Gorman.
Yes,
Christine,
thank you.
you're permitted to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you. City comptrollers come and go, and some have been really good and some have been kind of dubious. What would you do differently as comptroller than your predecessors?
Public service to me is an awesome honor and responsibility. And I actually wrote the law that prevents elected officials from seeking office once again if they've been convicted of public corruption. It's something that I take very, very seriously. I don't take this job as it's a privilege and it's an awesome responsibility. And there's nothing more important than making sure that number one, making sure that taxpayers see a return on their investment, a tangible return on their investment. But number two, that their money is being safeguarded, that their pensions are there to enjoy when they retire, and to make sure that we're rooting out fraud and waste and corruption, no matter who the mayor is. That's my North Star, because really integrity is ultimately what you do when no one is looking. And having a controller that's always going to make sure that your finances are looked after, and that you need a guardian to look over this money. It's $150 million, and it's our money. It's taxpayer money. There's nothing more important than protecting. I love it.
Now we're going to hear from Leila Lugaska.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So the controller is known for auditing city agencies, but is less recognized for the breadth of its power. The controller can also conduct performance audits and special investigations. How will you use these powers?
Sure. I would start with the Department of Education. You've got almost a $35 billion budget. I don't know I come from a family of public school teachers. I don't know any public school teachers who feel that their classrooms reflect a $35 billion budget. I think there's a lot of great people working at the DOE. I don't think they're doing a good job with allocating their money. And I don't think we're getting the outcomes we need. So I think an audit of the DOE, I would also audit HPD. What's happening at HPD is if you're trying to tell us that we're in a housing crisis, HPD is not acting as if we're in a housing crisis. They're not meeting the moment, and we need to better understand what's going on there. So those would probably be my first two audits that I'd like to do.
All right. Thank you so much. So my colleague tells me that your time is up. So do you want to take 1 minute to give us a closing statement?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I don't know many of you for very long, but I've spoken to a lot of you on the phone and tried to show you who I am. Look, I'm a Southern Brooklyn guy. If you ask me where I stand on something on Monday, you don't have to check with me again on Thursday. I stand where I stand. I'm always going to fight for you, even when no one is looking. I've proven in my role now as finance chair that I'm absolutely fearless when it comes to fighting against this mayor or any mayor, because my job is to represent you. You are my boss. The people are my boss. And we need to do away with politicians who think they know best and who are ignoring their constituents.
President.
To be a leader, you have to listen, and that is my promise to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again for sticking with the rules and the time. This is really much appreciated. We are moving on to the next candidate, Ishmael Malave. Ishmael, please come up to the podium. Yeah, let me actually give a little refresher on the rules. Just so that everybody understands, we will spend 19 minutes with each candidate. Each candidate will have 4 minutes to introduce themselves, and the remainder will be spent 15 minutes in Q&A. Your question shall be no longer than 30 seconds, and your answer, candidate, shall be no longer than 1 minute. We have a nice little music playing to let you know that your time is up, and we appreciate everybody sticking with the rules. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ishmael Malave, and I'm really honored to be here. I worked for 5 comptrollers: Carl McCall, Alan Hevesy, Tom DiNapoli, Bill Thompson, and John Liu. So day one, I know how the office works. I'm somebody that grew up in New York City since I was 5 years old. I live in the Bronx. I'm a homeowner. I raised 2 kids, and I did the right thing by my family. And I've always done the right thing by city taxpayers, because for the last 28 years now, I've been a public servant where I've helped people. I've helped people find homes. I've helped people run for office. I've helped individuals run for citywide and statewide office. And what's the difference between me and the current individuals that are running for this particular office is that I understand the role of the controller, the chartered mandate, the responsibility behind conducting audits. I've served as an auditor. I served as an expert witness in New York City Court to defend taxpayer dollars. I understand what it means to go into an agency and identify where the operations are losing money, where the waste may be happening, where there may be potential corruption or fraud, and how to execute and eliminate that. I'm somebody that will protect taxpayer dollars. That'll be the mandate. That is the main mandate. And I understand how to manage pension systems. When I worked for the John Lew administration, I managed approximately 35 partnerships, a little shy of $2 billion of the city's pension systems in the real estate portfolio, conducting financial real estate analysis, investment analysis. And so when it comes to protecting the pension systems and understanding how it works, I've sat side by side next to all of the other asset classes. And I'm not only somebody who understands it, I'm also a member of the pension systems for the last 28 years, like I said, 27 and a half years. So you know I'm gonna do my darndest to protect our money if you are a city employee. And you know that I'm gonna do my darndest to protect the taxpayer, your dollars, to make sure that your dollars are being served correctly, that the services are being provided, and that there's no mismanagement. That's what I promise to do as your next New York City Comptroller. I'm highly educated. I went to Lehman College. I have an economics degree, and I also have an MBA from CUNY's Harvard, the Zicklin School of Business at Baruch. And I love New York City. I love the people of New York. And at the end of the day, the blood that unites us is thicker than the water or the land that divides us. And so from all walks of life, I will interact and work on behalf of all New Yorkers, no matter where your families came from and or where you live. I will have your back 100%, because far too many times we elect individuals that come into office and they just want to use the office as a launch pad to the next office. If I get elected, when I get elected, I aim to get reelected as the comptroller. I plan to be there for 8 years, not 4 years like most individuals do when they get elected as comptroller. And another thing, at the end of the day, just think about, do you want somebody that's gonna learn on the job and be trying to figure out how it works for 2.5 years and get that learning curve, or somebody who already knows half the staff there, having worked with 2 city controllers? I already know a lot of the civil servants that are there, permanent employees. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to working on behalf of all New Yorkers.
Thank you very much. All right, the first question will be in the room, and we'll go to Kat Lafferty. Kat, go ahead.
Thank you so much for being here, Ishmael. First of all, before I ask my question, if you could just say if you were an analyst or what, for those of us who don't know, when you worked in the controller's office?
Of course. I was a senior investment analyst. And prior to that, I was in the community affairs unit, and I was also a senior advisor to all 5 controllers.
And so my question is, as someone who's lived in Hell's Kitchen for 25 years and in Borum Hill before that in Brooklyn, and who loves green spaces and privileged enough to be a community gardener, I want to know how could the controller's office impact not just increasing the budget for parks and making sure parks employees are paid well enough and appreciated, and there are enough horticulturalists and rat abatement specialists, but also
get to your question, Kat.
But also, how could you impact from the controller's office the planning of parks overall in all 5 boroughs, so that there are master plans that speak to one another?
Thank you, Kat. Thank you.
As the controller, I have oversight on the financial ability to go into the city's coffers and see where the money is being spent, if it's adequately being appropriated, if it's earmarked for certain projects, if it's being utilized for the services. So I will do a deep dive, as I plan to do as part of the mandate, with all of the agencies in making sure that their money, the money that's allocated within the budget, within the city budget, is actually being utilized for what it was mandated for or earmarked for. So that's what I would do as the controller, and do an analysis on the salaries, on the operations, and try to find out where we could save money so we could allocate those savings to better projects, to improve the parks, to improve, New York City as a whole.
Thank you. The next question goes to Roberta Gelb. Roberta. Then we'll go online, just to give you a little heads up, and Betty, Balin, and Jay Marcus will be next.
Okay.
So what can you do as controller to make sure that the retirees who were promised Medicare coverage do not wind up in Medicare Advantage? And should that contract pass your desk, will you sign it? That is the Aetna Medicare Advantage contract.
I am a procurement analyst currently for the city of New York. So the first thing I will do is I will analyze the contract, and more than likely will not sign it, because I will more than likely support 1096, especially they just won the lawsuit. And I know that the current controller supports it, and I will make sure that the retirees get their fair benefits. They get fair healthcare benefits, especially I'm going to be facing retirement myself in a couple of years. I want to make sure that I get those fair benefits. So I stand with all of the retirees, and I stand with the lawsuit.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, going online, the next question goes to Betty Balin. Betty, you're permitted to speak. You can unmute yourself.
Hi. As you're speaking, I've been hearing about the oversight and analytical role of the controller, and what you have done in terms of working so long in that office. So my question is, why has there not been an audit of the Thrive program? The Mayor de Blasio had this $850 million Thrive program meant for mental health that has never been publicly audited.
Okay, thank you, Betty.
Thank you. I did state that I am a procurement analyst currently, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot of money that went missing during the de Blasio administration, including $800 million that went missing. So the controller is mandated to audit every agency at least once a year. And I will make sure that I get to that program. And if there is an existing audit, the controller can go back, has 2 years to go back, by the way, and that's what I will do differently. I will go back to some of the existing audits that people have kind of put under the rug to make sure that I can go in there and review what the outcome was, to identify if there was any waste, fraud, or corruption, and rectify that situation.
Thank you. The next question is online and goes to Jay Marcus. Jay, you're permitted to speak.
Thank you. Hi, I am curious. I mean, you're working in the office for many years. So what are your 2 or 3 proudest accomplishments in terms of the power of the office? Because learning your history kind of predicts for us what you'll do in the future. Were there certain agencies you audited? Were you able to find substantial savings? Were you able to get some other additional productivity out of city government from your role? Thank you.
Well, some of my prior accomplishments were that I participated in conducting research in the basket clause that allowed the agency to invest more in certain financial instruments. And so I find that as one of my accomplishments, because it was a lot, there were a lot of due diligence, and I was able to help out pensioners. Another accomplishment was that I identified cost savings opportunities and how the city manages certain inventories through a investigatory audit of the city's inventory management processes across all of the 55 buildings. And I want to take that to the next level across all agencies, so we could save money and not spend, your taxpayer dollars on items that may be underutilized or cost, save the cost on that end. And so those are some of the areas where I kind of like am proud of. And just working with individuals and implementing like a computerized maintenance management software for all of the operations at DCAS even.
Thank you. Thank you. That question is in the room and goes to Len Paletta. Len.
So there's been a scandal in the New York City Police Department in terms of the spending for overtime. $1 billion was spent for overtime. When was the last time the New York City Police Department was audited? And what would you do to deal with the ongoing corruption in the police department?
So I'm not familiar with what is the findings of that scandal, but if there is a scandal, I will go in and audit the agency. Some of the agencies that I plan to audit will be the NYPD. And I will say that I am a Back the Blue candidate. I support the NYPD and the women and men and women, uniformed firefighters, and all of the city's first responders. But I do not support corruption or scandalous behavior with our taxpayer dollars. So that's an area that I would look into immediately.
Thank you. The next question goes to Paul Devlin.
Hey, Ishmael, thanks for coming. As the comptroller, you manage the pension funds that make sure there's a high enough return to pay retirees. If the pension fund doesn't and the investments don't make a good return, you have to dip into the general fund. How are you going to make sure that our investments in the pension fund produce well enough to pay retirees, while at the same time, we like to use the power of our purse and push for socially progressive issues such as not investing in gun manufacturing and things like that? Can you address that topic?
So some of the, sorry. Oh, okay. I will make sure that the systems are managed by professionals that as the comptroller, I have oversight and I have the ability to work with the team. And I will make sure that the chief investment officer inside Bureau of Asset Management diversifies certain pieces of the portfolio. So if there's a risk where we're underperforming in certain areas, I will strategically make sure that the team has a gap measure to assure that we don't lose our pension dollars. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, of course, if there are entities that are bad actors, I would look into divesting from them, especially if there are bad actors with human. That's it.
Thank you. The next question is on Zoom and goes to Christine Gorman. Christine, you're permitted to speak.
Thank you. You mentioned that you've worked with 5 different controllers, and you mentioned by name John Liu and Alan Hevesy among them, and yet both of them had corruption scandals. John Liu because of straw donors, and Alan Hevesy because he had a city employee drive his wife around town. How then do you deal with corruption?
So the good thing is that I learned not to make any of those mistakes that they had, and so my wife thankfully can drive herself around. But yeah, I am somebody that's going to be hands-on, and I'm going to make sure that I don't make any of my predecessors' mistakes. At the end of the day, it's all about safeguarding taxpayer dollars and making sure that your taxpayer dollars are being utilized according to the law. And so my aim is going to be to audit every agency across the board, whether mayoral or non-mayoral, as your next controller. And I will make sure that I don't make the same mishaps that any of my former principals made.
Thank you. Next question is in the room and goes to Lydia Andre. Lydia.
Hello, Lydia.
Okay. Then let's go to, Renee.
So are you willing to conduct a full forensic audit of NYCHA's finances to ensure transparency and accountability and how funds are allocated and spent, especially regarding repairs, pack rad conversions, and proposed demolitions?
Absolutely. So part of my team, in my team, I have a senior advisor, a chief advisor as part of my team who used to be a chairman of NYCHA. And I plan to audit NYCHA and go in and identify any mismanagement and basically address it. So yes, 100%. I plan to audit NYCHA. I want to audit the MTA. I want to utilize the power of the audit to identify any mismanagement and make sure that our taxpayer dollars are protected.
Thank you. The next question goes to David Warren. Okay, question. You signed up for a question. Go ahead.
Hi, good luck in your race, by the way.
Thank you.
As controller, will you be able to try to subsidize city bike riders and possibly subsidize municipal employees to travel on the transit systems, so they won't use motored cars?
Well, subsidized means that it's coming out of our taxpayer dollars, something that I would have to look into. Subsidized means going into the city's finances and trying to allocate funding to an area. So something that I would have to look into, because I don't know enough about it, but I do think that we need to charge some sort of, or identify an opportunity to make some sort of income from insurance fees for deliveristas or from folks that ride the bikes, because we get sued, believe it or not. So I want to see if whether or not there's an opportunity for us to safeguard the city's finances and avoid lawsuits from individuals who ride bikes in New York City.
And our last question will be Leila Lagiska.
Thank you so much. So if the NYCHA Chelsea project were to move forward the way NYCHA and related properties wants it, the project would require the issuance of a very, very large amount of bonds, of city bonds that would be issued by HDC. In your role as controller, can you actually explain what would be your responsibility and your leverage? Actually, can you explain what is the role of the controller on the issuance of city bonds? Do you review them? Can you object to them?
So my golden rule off the bat would be to assure that the city's bond rating is not jeopardized in any way, right? So to protect our bond rating so that our bonds are worth more, in other words. If our bond rating goes down, then investors won't come in. And so as controller, I will review the proposal by Related and NYCHA to assure that it's worth it. It's worth the investment. It's worth working it out. The city does issue bonds. There's various bonds that the city does issue, and currently we're doing well. The problem is that the debt is at 10%, and the current reports say that it may rise up to 15%. So that's not good. It's like credit cards. You want to stay below 10%, and it's a comfortable place to be. Now we're at 10%.
Great, thank you so much. So that wraps up the Q&A session. Ishmael, do you want to give us a 1-minute closing statement?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much. I'm the only non-political person running for the position. My aim is to bring common sense back into this office. I will not politicize the office or make decisions based on political ideologies. I aim to be the best controller New York City ever had, and I hope that you support me and endorse my candidacy. And thank you so much for allowing me to present my candidacy to your club. I'm a procurement analyst, a real New Yorker, and I love you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That concludes the Comptroller series of questions. We're now going to move on to the Borough President races. So we've heard from those three. We have one of the candidates here in the room already. After the first candidate speaks, we will have a slight break for people to use the restrooms and get some snacks in the back. And I will thank everybody again for this process. We met a lot of great candidates tonight. Go home and do your research, find out where you stand on these things, because you're going to be doing your endorsements at clubs. I think we do ours on the 20th, you do yours on the 14th. So this is an opportunity to learn about the candidates, but make sure you do your own research afterwards. So starting next, we're going to move over to Borough President candidates. Senator Brad Hoylman-Sigal is in the room, and a reminder of the rules for the people who showed up a little bit after the fact. Candidates are given 4 minutes for an introduction, and then they'll hear the Grammy music pull you off stage. Questioners are allowed 30 seconds to ask a question. Candidates then given a minute to respond. So Brad, and we use the microphone, please, and you're ready to go. 4 minutes starts now.
Thank you so much. Good to see everyone. Thank you very much. State Senator Brad Hoylman-Sigal. Really, thank you. Really honored to be here tonight, representing the West Side as your state senator, from Christopher Street to West 103rd, from the gay bars to the Zay bars. I can't say that enough. Caroline Crowell is here from my team. She's running my campaign. She's doing a great job. This week, I was proud to announce 10 endorsements, including members of the Assembly, Grace Lee, Deborah Glick, Linda Rosenthal, Tony Simone, Micah Lasher, State Senator Brian Kavanaugh, former Borough President Ruth Messinger, and Gail Brewer, and more to come. So I'm very honored and pleased to have their support. Thank you. You know, I really am running for this office because when I became your state senator, after having passed 363 bills in Albany, I was told that a single state senator cannot make a difference in that godforsaken capital city called Albany. And I think after passing all those bills, I have. And I feel the same can be said about the borough president. Some people say it's an ill-defined office. What does it do? It doesn't, legislate. I think all of those are wrong. And I am running because it is time, I believe, to bring quality of life issues to the forefront as borough president, to use the office as a hub for organizing for tenants. I want to create a Manhattan tenants union. I want to organize seniors, certainly around Medicaid Advantage and the controversy there. But I also want to organize parents through something that I'm calling a Parent Resource Advocacy Center. So they, particularly in underserved neighborhoods, can get the advice and information they need to get their kids into middle school and high school. And we need to have dyslexia screening across the borough, which I plan to use the borough president's offices as a resource in that regard. And then finally, I want to create an office that responds in a human way to your 311 quality of life complaints. How many times have you plugged your complaint onto 311 or called 311 and the issue is apparently resolved according to 311, but we know that's not the case. We need the human feedback loop of the borough president's office to actually do that job. And then in addition to those three bigger ideas, it's so important as borough president to focus on the town halls of our borough, which are our community boards. We need a fair process to appoint members. We need to get lobbyists off of community boards. It's going to be my first action. And we need to make sure that we have an independent screening panel so we get a fair representation of board members. This is a more important issue than ever now that we've passed, against my better judgment, term limits for board members. I'm really sad to see so many veterans of our local communities being removed from the community boards. They need to be put back on, and that's something I'm going to advocate as borough president. And then finally, just let me say this, public safety has to be a top issue along with affordable housing. Of course, we've got 2,056 units that are going to be demolished at Chelsea, Elliott, and Fulton if the current plan survives. We need to bring heightened scrutiny to that. I've been opposed to demolition since the beginning and remain so today. And it's going to be up to us and the new tenant leadership at Fulton and Chelsea Elliott, the new tenant leadership at Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton to work hand in glove with the New York State Attorney General, our local colleagues, to make certain that that plan preserves housing, preserves affordable housing, and makes certain that NYCHA residents get the apartments they deserve. Thank you very much. Happy to answer questions.
I'm going to remind folks online, if you want to ask a question of Brad Hoylman-Sigal, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you later. We'll start with Roberta Gelb.
Brad, I'm sure you know that rent stabilized apartments all over the city are being warehoused, hoping for a change in Albany. Also, we even have warehousing going on in NYCHA, where there are empty apartments, hundreds, maybe thousands of empty apartments in the city when we have this terrible housing shortage. So what would you do about this warehousing?
Well, we have a bill in Albany that Assemblywoman Rosenthal heads. I'm a co-sponsor of it, to penalize landlords who keep rent stabilized apartments vacant over a certain period of time. That's something we can also do at the city level. I will say also that, I think we've beaten back the Rent Stabilization Association and other groups that have challenged our 2019 historic rent reforms. I'm hopeful that after the Supreme Court rejected the most recent challenge, this Supreme Court, the conservative right wing as it is, rejected the most recent challenge, that landlords will finally understand that they're not going to beat us in court. We are keeping our rent stabilized regime in place. We fight for it every day in Albany. And it's time to open up those apartments. And then finally, I'll say this, we need to let New Yorkers know how many warehoused apartments there are. I asked that question of DHCR in Albany. They do not know the answer. That is shocking and unacceptable.
Right.
Thank you, Brad. Continuing on in the room, David Haloka.
Hi, Brad. It's very welcome news to me that you're against demolition at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea. That is kind of news to many of us, though, because we've consistently heard from other elected officials that all of the elected officials stand in unity in favor of the current pro-demolition plan. And Community Board 4's leadership recently met with you, if I'm correct, and brought back to the board the message that that was still the case. How official are you willing to make it that that is your stand against demolition?
I'll say this. Thank you. All of the elected officials opposed demolition from the very start. Then Council Speaker Corey Johnson organized a group of elected officials to meet at City Hall with NYCHA and City Hall, over 4 years ago. And we forced them to change the RFP from a demolition plan to a rehabilitation plan. What happened after that was incredibly frustrating. The RFP went out, the developer won it, and then they came back to us and said, oh, we looked under the hood and we actually have to demolish the buildings. Now, I and the State Attorney General and my colleagues still have many questions about how that RFP was won under those circumstances. So I think we've all opposed demolition from the start. Now, the question is, where do we go from here with an RFP that's been won by a developer who now says they're switching the plan to, over 2,000 units that are going to be demolished, 18 buildings, and a long time horizon that is going to force people, to perhaps never see a home that they wish to have renovated.
Brad, thanks. I'm going to allow this conversation to continue because I'm going to call on Renee to ask the next question.
I guess my question is a very unusual one. I was about to ask you, How do you support 550 in favor of new construction and rezoning versus the 949 against the petition? That says a petition that says no demolition. So it's nice to know that you no longer want to demolish. I can't say that for some of your colleagues, but you've said this. So when you just say preserve affordable housing, what is the affordable housing that you wish to preserve? Because NYCHA, I don't like the word affordable housing, but it is the most affordable housing that there is.
Well, you know, I mean, I think again, in defense of my colleagues, including Congressman Nadler, we got them to change the RFP so it would not consist of demolition. We were told that there was no alternative to it. Again, we have to question that, and we cannot accept, you know, this current proposal at face value. We're going to work with the state attorney general to ensure that that is the case, along with Councilmember Botcher and Assembly Member Simone, who have done great work so far. But let's go back to your specific question, Renee, about remind me again, what was the last part?
When you say affordable housing, even though I don't like the word, because
Yeah.
most of the time it's affordable.
Yeah.
I hope the word affordable actually goes to the NYCHA housing, because we are the most affordable and everyone should have what we have.
Absolutely. You know, and that goes to the issue of public ownership of housing and the fact that, look, after the Chelsea Elliott Fulton RFP went out, Albany passed a better bill than Rad Pact, which is called the NYCHA Trust Model, which is about renovation and keeping the buildings 100% affordable and publicly owned. I think that's the better route than Rad Pact, 100%. So as borough president, I will be pursuing the trust model, not the Rad Pact model.
Thanks, Brad. We're going to hear from someone, go to online now, hear from somebody new. Ruby Rims, you're up.
Hi, Brad. You said safety is one of your main priorities. What do you feel is the possibility of licensing e-bikes? They have just become completely out of control, especially here in Hell's Kitchen.
Yes. Just to clarify for the room, because the audible was a little bit off, question about licensing e-bikes.
Completely agree with you, Ruby. Thanks for the question. Assemblymember Simone and I actually have a bill in Albany to license all commercial e-bikes. Let's face it, the companies like Uber Eats and Grubhub are making millions of dollars off of our public infrastructure using our sidewalks and our bike lanes to make profit. They need to act more responsibly. Their drivers that are operating commercially should all be licensed. Why is that important? So if there is an infraction, an officer can actually issue a summons based on the license plate number. Now, I'm very happy, Ruby, to have passed the bill in Albany that required gasoline-powered mopeds to be licensed at the point of sale, so they could not leave the retail establishment without having been registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles. So we're going to work on our bill, and we're going to continue to make certain that Class 3 e-bikes are also commercially registered, which is in the governor's budget proposal, and Assemblymember Simone and I also carry that legislation.
Thanks. One more online. We'll go to Christine Gorman.
Good evening, Brad. Quick question. Where do you stand on the development of casinos in Midtown Manhattan?
Well, I've been pretty clear in my votes in Albany that I oppose casino gambling. And, you know, I view it, generally speaking, as a poor tax. But it really comes down to the fact that we should only put a casino where the community wants it. That's why community boards are so important. We saw the resolution from Community Board 4 recently on the ULURP. And what was it? It was the first time since 1986 that you had a resolution of that unanimity. And secondly, I'll say that the CAC, the Community Advisory Council, is set up in a way that, in effect, the community will have veto power over any of these casinos. Oh, talk to the camera. Hello. The other thing I would add is that we have to acknowledge there are some economic development benefits, including good union jobs, has to be put on the table. The community needs to consider that. At the same time, if the community doesn't want a casino, they shouldn't have a casino. End of story.
Thank you, Brad. I'm going to move to a few more people in the room. We'll call on Carla Fine, followed by Judith Dahill.
So recently, your colleagues, many of your colleagues signed a letter of support for 1096 in the city council. You did not sign on to this. I emailed you and you wrote back that you support the New York State bill for retirees. I want to know why you didn't lend your support to 1096 along with many of your colleagues. It felt like a really great disappointment to many of us that you did not sign on to that letter.
Was this Councilmember Marte's letter? Yeah. Well, let's start with procedure. I'm a state legislator. I do my job in Albany. I sign legislative letters in Albany, not in the city council. But I 100% agree with the approach. I'm just doing my job in Albany. The medical, let me say something else. I'd like to think that we in Albany have played an important role in advancing this effort, because don't forget that we appointed Rowan Wilson as the chief judge of the Court of Appeals, which has ruled in favor of the retirees. I don't think you would have gotten that result if you had a Court of Appeals under the not previously nominated judge. So we have really advanced that.
So you do support 1096. You do support 1096.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't sign legislative letters that aren't from my own legislative body.
Thank you. Judith?
Thank you, Brad. So nice to see you. I was just in Albany yesterday, and I know my question on the sheet was about the Medicare and Medicaid, but you've answered that, and it's a broken record. So thank you very much. But I was there talking about the plastic better bottle bill and the Plastic Reduction Act. I know that you support both of them and you sponsored, but what are you doing to help them move along? Because I don't know what happened with the budget hearing yesterday, but be interesting to hear from you what you're doing to help move those two very important acts along.
Hugely important because of plastic waste and the lack of incentive and the need to modernize our recycling facilities to include them. I've been a co-sponsor for a number of years, and the Senate has passed these bills. It's really on the Assembly to pass it and to get it to the governor for her signature. But we'll pass it again. We're on record passing it already. We'll pass it again thanks to the leadership of State Senator Pete Harcum and my colleague, Senator Rachel May. We're going to pass those bills again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Todd. Next up is Todd Shapiro.
Hi there. My name is Todd Shapiro. Brad, I know that you have the greatest respect for the community boards. One of the issues that community boards are dealing with are those of doing online sessions. And there's a lot of requirements, equality requirements relating to that. And the community boards have a lot of responsibility, but little funding. And we really, quite honestly, we really struggle to make it a quality experience for the public. What can you do if you're elected as borough president to help remedy that?
Well, I do support lowering the quorum requirements for online participation, so that the quorum requirement is online is only 25%, to make it easier for people to participate, particularly folks who may be ill or may have childcare issues or professional obligations. Secondly, we need to make sure that community boards have the resources they need. The borough president is the place where those resources need to be fought for, whether it's a AV equipment or the like. That's very important. And then finally, we need to have, training and to make certain that community board members, understand their bylaws, work within their bylaws, and ensure that, they have the technical assistance to actually have meetings that are hybrid and work efficiently and effectively. That's one of the jobs of the borough president, the great convener of our community boards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and our final question will come online from Craig Slutskin. Craig, you should be able to unmute now. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, Senator. As the borough president, you do have some influence over the DOE because you have appointment powers over CECs and PEP. And as you probably know, since the pandemic, we're constantly losing kids to the suburbs, to elite private schools. They get to middle school, they get to high school. They're not happy with the rigor of the schools. Some of them for high schools aren't getting any of their 12 choices and get assigned God knows where. As borough president, how would you handle that? And what would your action be to rectify that?
Yeah, thank you, Craig, for that question. I'm the only parent with the kid in the system in this race. So I feel it personally. That's one of the reasons why I want to create what we're calling a parent resource and advocacy center, a hub for parent engagement to supplement our CECs and our PEP, which are, as you say, two very important appointment powers on the part of the borough president. Parents need to get organized, just like tenants need to get organized and seniors need to be organized. Parents need to be organized. I think we can create this resource to, particularly for underserved families that are trying to figure out where to send their kid for middle school or high school. It's very confusing. Look, my husband and I, we were online, we went to meetings. It's impossible to figure out. But I believe if you have this central organizing feature of the borough president's office, you can make a difference for families that are trying to work within the system and get their kids in the appropriate school. Because you're right.
Brad.
Let me just say,
Brad, I'm gonna give you the opportunity.
say one thing. Our public schools, one of the most important.
This is your closing statement.
Components of our city. And if we don't have successful public schools, you will continue to see people flee the city, just as Craig suggested.
Thank you, Brad. Instead of 1 minute for closing, you have 30 seconds for closing then.
Okay, I'm done. No, thank you very much. It's been an honor to speak to you tonight. There are many challenges ahead of us as a community, as a borough. The difference in, the quality of housing and schools and infrastructure and arts and culture, in lower Manhattan versus upper Manhattan is not lost on me. We are fortunate to live in an incredibly well-resourced neighborhood here on the West Side, but we have our challenges with low-income folks, public housing, rent-stabilized tenants, people trying to make it in this very difficult city. My job is to make it a little bit easier to work on those quality of life issues, to help organize people so they can look after their families and prosper. And
thank you so much, Brad. Appreciate it. For everybody in the room, if you'll indulge me, I lied. We're not going to take a break. We're going to go right on to the next candidate since Keith is in the room. Next candidate for borough president is Keith Powers. Keith, as a reminder, the run of show is candidates have 4 minutes to do an introduction, followed by a 15-minute session of Q&A, 30 seconds for question, 1 minute for answer. You'll hear the Oscar music play when you're time to get off stage. All right, so if everybody in the room can please allow the opportunity for Keith to speak, that'd be great. Go ahead.
All right, I'm on the clock. So nice to see everyone. First of all, thank you to the clubs for having us tonight. I know there's a lot going on in the city this evening, a lot of different forums. So I'm very honored to be with you. Some of you know me. I'm City Council Member Keith Powers. I've had the privilege and the honor of being a City Council member here in Manhattan for 8 years. It is a misnomer that I am an East Sider only. I actually do represent the West Side. I've been honored to represent some of you and both on the community board and as your council member. Those who don't know me, I just want to give you a little background. I am a lifelong resident of Manhattan. I grew up just walking distance away from here in Stuyvesant Town and Peter Cooper. I actually was a son of a nurse at Bellevue Hospital, and my dad owned a neighborhood restaurant right down the block. So our story is really middle-class story, a real middle-class story here in the city. I got, my ability to live in a great neighborhood here in the city because of our rent stabilization and our strong tenants association and the ability to create a strong neighborhood because we had great housing. And when I left, when I first got back from college, the first thing I did is I got involved in tenant organizing in Stuyvesant Town. And if you know the story of Stuyvesant Town, you know it was the battle between tenants and landlords. And you know that we got to work as a tenants association to make sure we fought back against my neighborhoods and my neighbors, for my neighbors who were getting eviction notices and rent increases and illegal deregulation. And the first thing I did is I joined with my counselor at the time to put a tenant organization effort to buy our neighborhood. And while we were unsuccessful, we put leverage and power together to make sure that as tenants, we could stand up and we could actually have political power in that process. And if you have followed that story over the last few years, I joined the Tenants Association, and now as a city council member just last year, we fought and won a very big victory for 6,000 residents in Stuyvesant Town to save their rent regulation, thanks to the 2019 rent laws that we all fought for. And as a result of that, we now have across the city tenants who are also receiving the benefits of our hard work and our power. And to me, since I've been in office in 2018, that has been the center of the focus, is making sure that working class, middle class, regular people in the city have a voice in city government, that when they come to the places like the city council and they're looking for help, that we get to work and we fight it. And whether it's Stuyvesant Town or the work we've done in other parts of my district, like in Waterside Plaza, where we lowered the rents for senior tenants there. We built 200 supportive housing units in Midtown and much more. We have made the focus, making sure that our action in government is reflective of the people and reflective of those who are looking and searching for good housing here in the city. I did announce in August, after 8 years in the city council, that I am running for borough president, because I do think that many of the challenges we face are not just at the local level. We have a lot of work to do borough-wide and citywide to bring action and talk about many of the things I've worked on the council. I've fought to pass numerous pieces of legislation in the council to prevent housing discrimination, to prevent overcharges for renters here in the city. I think it's essential we lower the rents, and we do use all our powers to do that. I worked to build more affordable housing, as I talked about. And I was recognized as a top lawmaker by city and state in 2019 for my efforts, legislative efforts, my responsiveness to constituents, and the work that we had been doing. We've been working to increase public safety, expediting gun violence investigations, tracking down illegal guns, strengthening concealed carry laws. We have worked around quality of life. You might know I'm working to take down the damn scaffolding in the city, tackling noise pollution, talking about e-bike fires and much more. We've been working to small businesses to make, my dad was a small business owner, so making sure that the city is not using them as a revenue source, that we are actually going in and passing laws that make it easier to run a business here in the city. And during COVID, spearheaded a number of bills that would have helped to make, and did make our businesses survive that very, very scary time. And also I have kind of I'll just end on this because I know there's a lot of questions. I think that my record and my experience here as a New Yorker make me highly qualified to be your next borough president. The role of a city council member, the role of borough president have so much in common, whether it's budget, community boards, legislation, policy making, land use, and so much more.
Great.
And I would love to be your borough president. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thanks, Keith. Roberta Gelb will ask our first question, please. A reminder to people online, if you'd like to ask a question of Keith Powers, raise your hand and we'll move you over.
There are many retirees in Stuytown, many of whom are New York City retirees. I'm hearing that you have not met with them about 1096 and that you have not signed on to 1096. So my question is, why aren't you supporting New York City retirees so they get the health care they were promised?
Sure. Thank you for that question. Great question. First of all, I have met with them many times, Bob Pfefferman, Elizabeth Banlin. I can tell you they're not, I don't just meet them in my office. They're my neighbors, the people that I have Thanksgiving dinner with. They are the people that I've grown to know my entire life. Some of the people we've talked about, Bob Pfefferman is a great example. He's one of the leaders in Stuyvesant Town around this. Bob and I in 2005 were doing tenant organizing to save our neighborhood together. And I have a really high respect for him. So I have met with them. I'm highly engaged in it. Look, I did an op-ed, which I'm happy to share with all of you, that's stated my position pretty clearly. And that is that I think the city should drop the lawsuit. It should allow the retirees to keep their health care. And that we should get back to the table and in a collective bargaining agreement, which is the way we usually handle these things, we should solve a number of issues. One is letting the retirees keep their health care. Two is finding that budget savings we want to talk about. We do that through the budget process. And three is then coming up with a long-term solution for a healthcare that doesn't take away your healthcare, but does figure out this for the long term. I will be a retiree too, by the way. I care about this issue, but I do recognize there are people who are immediately facing this. I'll send you my op-ed.
I'm not a retiree.
Oh, you're not
Thank you.
retired?
So we're going to move on to the next question in the room, please. Lydia, you want to come up and ask your question?
Hi, I'm so interested to hear you talk about protecting your neighborhood and saving your neighborhood. One of the challenges with the NYCHA project that's on the table is that it's affordable housing at what cost? Our elected officials have told us they want 1,000 units of affordable housing. In order to do that, they're willing to destroy 2,500 NYCHA apartments, change a campus, and also build a lot more mixed income with lots of luxury housing. At what cost is affordable housing borne by a community?
Yes, I understand. Look, I do not want communities to be in battle with each other over the right way to move through on this. And I'm not the city council member there, so I obviously do defer a bit to the elected officials there. And I do, of course, think the most important thing is that the community is helping to make that decision and that we make our decisions based on what the community is telling us around that. So I think you're speaking about, well, I think I know specifically what you're speaking about, but on the larger question about affordable housing, look, I think it's essential right now that as we're creating new housing, we are doing deep affordability. We are making it actually affordable for middle class and working class New Yorkers to afford neighborhoods, including those like the ones we live in, which are great neighborhoods. And that is part of the strategy. We talk about public sites and public locations here in the borough. Those do have to come with guarantees of deep and, I would love full affordability, but really deep and meaningful affordability on those sites. We do need to do a lot more on the housing front. That includes adding opportunities in all 5 boroughs. We also need to make sure that people of all different income levels can meet that. And I'm sort of want to end this battle that people feel like they're under assault when there's new affordable housing coming on.
Let's stick with the theme and ask Renee to come up.
The Oscar music gets me every time, by the way. I talk fast, but I guess I talk long too.
Okay, so maybe I can clarify.
Sure.
So I am now the Resident Association President of the
Yes,
Elliott Chelsea
congratulations.
Houses.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Yes, so I ran on an anti-demolition platform, so I was able to get the spot. So 550 surveys said new construction and rezoning. You have a petition with 949 saying no demolition. So how would you continue to justify continuing to support the demolition?
Thank you for the question. Look, I will be the first to admit to you that I have not spent time with you, so I would love to meet with you and talk to you about that specific issue. Look, I treat everyone's community like it's mine. Like I've defended in my community my neighbors and my residents, and I would treat you and everyone in your community the same way, which is that your community matters as much as mine does. And I'd be happy to come talk to you about the specifics of that. And I know you just got elected, so I read Layla's emails, so congratulations. Look, I'd be happy to come talk to you about it. I want to be respectful to all the different actors in this process. I know my fellow elected officials on the west side have been working on this, so I'd be happy to talk to you about more about it and hear your side and give you some more feedback on that.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. We're going to go online now, so we'll migrate Christine Gorman again. Christine?
Thank you. Where do you stand on the development of casinos in Midtown Manhattan?
Say that again? Sorry.
Just where do you
we are on the path in the next few months. I have one casino in my proposal, I should say, in mind. Look, I think it's a very high bar, and I think the community, I share some of the comments made earlier that I think it's very hard and difficult to do this without the community coming out in full support of it. And I know the skepticism, including the recent resolutions from the committee board about some of these casinos. There is a tremendous amount of economic opportunity and growth, but I think we're going to talk about casinos. We need the community on board with that. It's a very, very high bar for me to say yes to it. Of course, I will only be playing the role on one of the community panels on that. And I certainly have colleagues on the west side who will be, I know, listening to the folks in the community, I hope, about what their wishes are.
Thank you. One more from online. We'll go to Lizette.
Can you hear me?
Well, you
Go
got
ahead, Lizette. Your 30 seconds.
Hello.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Powers, it's wonderful to hear you talking. However, the words are getting nowhere because you're a very nice talker, but no doer. As the council member, you have not supported the retirees either in intro 1099 nor in intro 1096. And every time that we ask you a question regarding casino or demolition or whatever, you have no idea what is going on in your community. So how can you run as a candidate for board of presidents? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if that was a question about the bill or otherwise. I have articulated my positions on the retirees, on the casinos, and much more. To me, one of the guiding principles here is working with the community to make sure that decisions that are made on their behalf, like casinos, like affordable housing, and like development, are met with the actual community's input and their support. And on many of these issues in my district, that's how I operate. And that is how I will be operating on all the issues that we talk about here today. On the retirees, I want to say again, I do think the retirees should keep their health care. I think there's a path to that, and I think the city should drop its lawsuit so we can allow that to happen.
Thank you, Keith. Katie Hamill will be next in the room.
Hi, Keith. I appreciate everything you say and have done so far to increase housing equity in this city. I'm a resident of subsidized housing. I live in Manhattan Plaza. You're in Stuyvesant. However, equity means in all forms of housing, and there's no upward mobility if we can't ever buy. So why won't you support Intro 407, which allows for transparency in denials of cooperative apartments?
Sure. Look, it is an issue that I generally support. And I took on one of the biggest housing discrimination bills I think the city council has done in decades. And that was about people that have a past history, background related to background checks and criminal backgrounds. Very hard bill, but I think we got it to a very good place. And it was one of the most impactful and I think one of the most difficult bills to get through the city council in probably nearly a decade when it comes to housing discrimination. And that was preceded by my bill around source of income discrimination. So it's an issue I care deeply. The way I approached the bill within the Fair Chance Act that I did was really to get everyone at the table and figure out how we can do something that won't get litigated, that won't get met with opposition. And we've had, like, I care deeply about making sure that people have access to housing, and my record, I think, is pretty clear about that. And on that bill particularly, I do want to make sure we can get everyone at the table and actually speak to the issues that the co-op owners have. And figure out a path that we can do that. And I would be happy to facilitate that type of conversation. And I think that's what I'm particularly good at, is bringing these parties together so that we can think about getting something like that done. And I think that's overdue, frankly.
Thanks, Keith. Pat Lafferty. No, all right, then Layla, I guess, goes requested.
Thank you. My question has to do with community boards. The appointment of Open New York members to community boards has caused a lot of consternation in 2024. Do you agree with those of us who think that it was wrong to pack the boards with members from the same lobbying organization? And if so, what would you do to remedy it? And if you think that it was okay to do that, can you explain why?
Look, my approach, I was on the community board. I was on community board 6 before I got on the board. And the method, I think, as we approach term limits, we are going to be approaching term limits for community boards. And whether you love that or hate that, it is the reality. We are going to get to a place where we need to heavily recruit new people to serve on our boards, train them, recruit them. I am going to ask former community board members to be part of a process to help train them and to make sure that they have the skill sets to be a good community board members from the very jump, and also that they're good participants in the neighborhood. I am going to use an independent screening panel process to recruit and train people. I'm going to take the politics out of the process. I'm going to use an independent panel. I think that is the best way to make sure that you have diverse voices from every neighborhood on the board, that you have the best skill set, and that you can take any sort of political political process out of actually appointing people. That is a process I think is good government. I think is reform minded. And I think is a way to address the issues that people have been raising about who's on the boards, what the conflicts of interest may be. And that panel will review conflict of interest and look for a balance in the boards. I'm not going to say no one of any side, like people, we need to have a rich diversity of the boards with different views and opinions. I think the best way to do is a very good government way, which is put this in the hands of an independent panel, let them make the decisions and review the resume.
Thank you, Keith. Sticking on the community board themes, Todd, do you want to ask your question again? Can you come up to the microphone, please, Todd, because we can't hear on Zoom without that.
I'm going to put the same question to you, Keith, that I put to Brad.
Yes, sir.
Which is that we are required. Yeah. Keith, I'm going to put, my name is Todd Shapiro.
Okay. We know each other well.
Yes, we do.
Waterside.
And thank you for your efforts at Waterside. That's made a big difference in our community in terms of keeping longtime members of modest means, middle-class people in the community. But I'll put the same question to you that I put to Brad, which is that we on the community boards have a big responsibility to have hybrid meetings. We need to have equipment. We need to have training. The rules having to do with quorum and, the actual board members being in on site, are very tough. What can you do, or what would you do if you're elected board president to get funding and to give us the support that community boards need?
Sure. Great question. I fund some of the community boards right now through my budget, including technology for some of the boards. And I represent 3. I used to represent 4 boards, and we used to fund them directly, which you can do. Our president can do that, by the way, too. Look, it's always going to be an evolving thing. We have to look at the rules for community boards to see exactly how they're performing and if they're performing well. And in this new world I talked about, that might be an opportunity to talk about how to invest more in them. Frankly, I think the community boards as an essential piece of land use equation and in community input, including casinos, we talked about as well. We need way more resources. We do need to do the training and the mentoring of the new members so they can get up to speed, just like the members have been on for a very long time. And I don't want to overstate that, but that is coming. Term limits are coming. We need to really make sure the boards have everything they need. I would be happy to look at ways we can invest in new technology and new ways to assist the boards. So count me in for that. And I think we have to treat them like they're a real government agency. I know it's volunteers who serve on the boards, but the boards themselves are a city agency and they should be resourced like a city agency. We shouldn't let them take budget cuts during when it's time to do budget cuts. And we should be raising their budgets and increasing them so they can do land use and planning and other essential functions in a professional way.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you, Keith. We're going to take our last question.
Thank you, Keith.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Todd. We're going to take our last question from online. Miriam Fisher, you should be able to ask your question now.
I want to go back to some of the issues about health care for everyone. We've talked about the former city employees. Would you support, as an elected, Medicare for everyone, single payer? The president just, scared everybody by threatening to end all those kinds of programs. We need to support.
Do you support universal health care?
Yes, absolutely. Right. At the state level, but frankly, I think we are dividing ourselves as states right now. We are in blue bubbles and we are in red bubbles. And when we look at the last 24 hours and 48 hours, what the Trump administration has been doing, they are coming for the social safety net. And I'm not overstating that. They are going to cut the essential institutions of this city. So what we have to do as a city and the state is to recognize that we are targets, and we have to start supporting our institutions that are going to be cut in a very sort of deep and thoughtful way. We have to start filling in the gaps. And by the way, we have to fix our contracting process so those entities actually get the money and get it on time. And we have to start thinking about ways to be creative to fight back against the Trump administration. And New York City and New York State have to be the leader of that. We should be doing a laboratory around here of how to do something like single payer healthcare in New York City or New York State. And we should be able to prove that concept so we actually have a national model to build on. And if we don't govern effectively in blue states, we are not going to make the case to govern nationally as Democrats. We have to be doing our jobs and doing it well, and we have to innovate, and we have to look at ideas about healthcare and access to healthcare and reproductive healthcare, and we have to do that in a way that we actually can prove to the national, the whole country that this is doable And we have to use our
Thank you.
resources and political power in blue states where all Democrats
Thank you,
govern to
Keith.
do that.
Keith,
Thank
it sounds like you're using up your closing statement time. So you have a minute for
right.
closing statement if you want.
Thank you. Listen, thank you for the questions, and I deeply appreciate everyone for being here tonight. This is a very, very big year. This is about the future of New York City. The New York City I grew up in, the New York City you guys have lived and invested in. And we have to get these questions right. We have to make sure we solve the housing crisis. We talk about affordable housing in a meaningful way. We think about the land use process as a way to actually deliver that. And we talk about community boards and community board processes in order to empower them. And I think my history as a council member lends itself to that. I have a record that I'm deeply proud of. Today I received 100% rating for the New York League of Conservation voters for my record around transitioning the entire fleet of city vehicles to 100% electric vehicles, zero emissions. I was the leader against the composting cuts and the recycling cuts. We have universal composting now in the city coming. I'm very proud of that. I feel like I earned that 100% record. But look, the most important thing to me is that we really empower our communities at a time. We talk about the Trump administration, what is coming for us, but that we make sure that all these big things that I'm using my dad. Listen, I will say this. I humbly ask for your support. And I am so humbled at all times to be able to join such amazing clubs. I would love to have your support and your endorsement. And I submit my request for that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for giving me
Thank you,
time here
Keith.
tonight.
Thank you, everybody. I would like to pick up a little bit on Keith's theme about we have close to 100 people at this forum tonight. This is a reminder that we as Democrats don't give up, right? We are going to fight. We're going to keep going. We're not going to be pushed down. We're going to stand up and resist. We're going to take things on. And I'm so thrilled that so many people are participating today after 5 days of Dorito Head. How do we call it? What do we call it? So I'm grateful that you're all here. A reminder that the next candidates forum will be on February 4th at 6:30 at Hudson Guild. So please plan to attend that one. And we have about 20 minutes before we have to leave the room, and there's some snacks in the back and water. So let's hang for 20 minutes and get out. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. And I'll say a few words in closing. Clubs endorse. This is one of the big responsibilities that we have, one of the big powers. We are going to endorse candidates in all of these races, and this is the time that we have to dedicate to doing our due diligence. We need to figure out what these candidates stand for, who will be the best representation for our communities. Both CRDC and HK Dams are fierce clubs that really do their work very, very seriously. We work together. We are sister clubs, brother clubs, and this is really in this collective work that there is power. So I really appreciate all the participation. I thank you all for being here. Thank you to HK Dams and to Paul for co-moderating, our wonderful timekeeper who did a stellar job of keeping the time and making sure that we wrap up on time. Enjoyed the water. Sorry, it's not more festive. Next time we'll have Cabernet or Merlot, maybe, or maybe we're not allowed. I don't know. And thank you so much and good evening, everyone.